Hey, hello. Welcome to the living room. My name's Warren Langford, and this podcast is the latest project from 505-O-Matic. We're a small independent news collective out of Santa Fe trying to approach New Mexico journalism in a way that works with our community, not just for it. Kind of like this active rather than passive endeavor. So far, most of our work has been little videos for social media. But when our friends at Slice of Santa Fe asked if we'd be interested in hosting a community conversation series at the Jean Cocteau Cinema, we were like, yes, please. Can we also record it and share it everywhere online? So for our first episode, we wanted to dive into what we're actually trying to do, which is local journalism. Right now, I'm in front of a statue on Marcy Street I've walked by my entire life, always assuming it had something to do with the Santa Fe New Mexican, our local paper. It's a man sitting, calmly inscribing symbols into a large tablet. And I just talked to a few staffers, and it turns out nobody really knows who made it or why it's there. It's a mystery, which is one we'll probably unpack in a future little video. But for now, I just felt like it was the perfect place to kick off this episode, which is also about a bit of a mystery. How can local journalists expand their reach and actually meet the moment now that so many traditional outlets have lost the trust of their audiences? To do that, we gathered a few people who I think are doing some of the best work around these parts, put them on couches in front of a live movie theater audience, and had the following conversation. Enjoy. Thank you, Desba. So, this is our first episode of our podcast, and I thought it would be appropriate to talk about what we're trying to do, local journalism. And to do that, I am joined today by four outstanding local journalists who are in the trenches every day. Alicia Guzman, right here, was raised in the northern New Mexico village of Chuches and has written about histories of place, identity, and land use in New Mexico. She brings this knowledge to her current role as an investigative journalist with Searchlight New Mexico, covering nuclear industry, where she focuses on the expansion of weapons production and the Los Alamos National Laboratory, nuclear waste storage, and environmental and health impacts on women and communities of color. Alicia holds a PhD in visual and cultural studies from the University of Rochester, New York. Also to my left, Laura Paskus, a longtime reporter based in Albuquerque, New Mexico. She is the author of At the Precipice, New Mexico's Changing Climate, University of New Mexico Press, 2020. I'm sure if I should say the copyright. And an editor of Water Bodies, Love Letters to the Most Abundant Substance on Earth. I'm not going to read the copyright this time. She began her career at High Country News in 2002, and most recently was a senior producer of Our Land, New Mexico's environmental past, present, and future for 8 seasons on New Mexico PBS. Laura. Austin Fisher is a senior reporter with Source New Mexico, covering government, labor, policy, and public health. His award-winning work has appeared in KUNM and the Santa Fe Reporter and newspapers across the state. There you go. And this one I wrote by hand, so I might fuck it up. Megan Kamerick serves as news director at KUNM Public Radio in Albuquerque. She produced public affairs shows and podcasts on women's suffrage and cannabis at New Mexico PBS, where she was a producer and host. Megan did 2 TED Talks and is a TED speaker coach and a mentor editor with the Op-Ed Project. Thanks for being here, everyone. So, yeah, like as Desmo was talking about earlier, we started 505-O-Matic, but the reasons we did it is because we saw a lack of journalism in our social feeds. And I think that's where a lot of us spend a lot of time. And we thought, there's not enough of that, and there's way too much white guy yelling content. And we thought that's not right. We should do something about that. But my question is for everyone here, why am I not seeing more of your content in my social feeds?
I'll jump in.
There we go.
All right, I will jump in. So there's a bunch of different answers to that. One is traditional media hasn't, they're doing other things. They're doing investigative work. They're doing daily reporting. They're putting out a newspaper, putting out a television show. There's that side of it. There's only so many people working at a newspaper or at a television station. And the other part is we haven't been very good at social media and various media outlets. And the other thing is, even when we try to be good, we're not paying for sponsored content. We're not doing things in a way that shakes up people's algorithms. So like when I was at New Mexico PBS, I would produce segments that were between like 5 minutes and 25 minutes for broadcast. And then I would take that and I would snip it down to 59 seconds to make a reel. And then I would make Instagram, what are those things called?
Carousel.
Like carousel.
Yeah.
And I would like break out the most important point, and I was like doing everything, right? And then I would look at the analytics, and I would be putting all this effort in, and people would watch 6 seconds of it. So I'm like, honestly, I don't know what y'all want. Like, I don't know like how to reach people. I don't know how to get into their algorithms.
So you're saying you're making it?
I was when
you
I was
were
at PBS.
You were making it.
Yeah.
And it just wasn't getting into people's feeds.
Yeah, I mean, you would have like on that account, the like Our Land Instagram account at New Mexico PBS, like putting so much time and energy into these things, and they're getting like 10 likes. And then I would look at like an activist group or somebody who is making like maybe catchier stuff that maybe isn't totally like factual or original, and they're getting like 1,000 likes. So like journalists, we just haven't either figured out how to do social media really great, or we're not paying. It used to be people paid journalists, subscribed to a newspaper, donated to their station. And now it feels like with social media, journalists have to be paying in order to get their content into these social media feeds.
So you mean paying the platforms?
Yeah, like with ads or sponsored content, or so it costs you money to do the thing that you're trying to provide people with information.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, for those of you who don't know, if you put up a video, there's a little button down at the bottom that says boost this post. We have not done that yet, and we don't have any money to do that. And from what I gather, you guys don't either.
Can I jump? Can I add on to
sure.
what Laura's saying? I mean, you and I talked about this before, but one thing all of us know, and we assume you all know, but that's bad to make assumptions, is that media in the last 20 years has been completely hollowed out. Like a third of print newspapers are gone over the past 2 decades. There are vast news deserts. Over 50% of journalists in one study are like burned out and thinking of quitting. I mean, that's another factor. So
Dark.
I mean, we're all trying to do more with less, and we have to make a lot of choices about what we're going to cover and what we're not going to cover. Thank God I have a student who's amazing, and she already was doing social media, so she's totally revamped our Instagram. And that's what it takes, someone who lives in that digital world to know what to do. And I'm just saying, to Laura's point, to assign someone to do that, it means you're not doing something else.
Yeah.
That's just the reality, because I'm not going to make people work 80 hours a week. I can't anyway. I mean, I can because I'm exempt, but I try not to. But I also, she just knows, she had already done social media for businesses. She knew what she was doing. And now she loves radio. And thank God for the New Mexico Local News Fund, because now I get to, yes, she's graduating and I get to keep her for a year as a fellow, because otherwise I couldn't. And it's not that some of my, I mean, I'm the oldest one in the newsroom. They know how to do, the other people know how to do it, but it's like they also have to report. They have to make a broadcast version. They have to make a digital version that goes on the website, because I don't have a digital editor. So they have to do all that. And I'm like, oh, can you make a reel? Can you make a thing? They know how to do it, but it's like, what are your priorities and where are you going to put people's time? And that means you're not going to cover that other thing.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying it's not, it is very important, because young people don't have radios. They don't listen to radio. And when we did focus groups last year, we realized, like, well, they want the information we're providing, but we're not meeting them where it is. So yeah, we have a ton of reels and posts and stories now on Instagram. And I guess she feeds them to TikTok too, but primarily Instagram. And a lot of it is very basic stuff, like during the legislature, like, how does a bill get introduced and move through? Because you know what? A lot of people don't know that.
Yeah.
And they're embarrassed they don't know stuff. And young people wanted information on voting. And it's fascinating to me. We had a call-in show with young voters, and I was answering phones, and I'm hearing them saying, we don't know where to find our ballot. We don't know. And I was like, I'm just sitting here Googling, how do I get, I mean, but I asked Mia and I said, I don't get it. You guys grew up with these. And she said, we learned how to swipe and do things. They don't necessarily know how to, like, go find information, which kind of blew my mind. So there's a lot we could be doing right now to help them get the information they need. So I'm so excited she's gonna be on staff, because it's like, we have to be living there.
Yeah, that's a game changer. And
for us, I mean, ideally, because that's our audience in the future. So we have to meet them where they are.
Sure. Yeah.
But it's been it's only recently that we've.
And have you seen your numbers go up because of these posts?
Yeah, she has. We're getting a lot of engagement.
Oh, amazing.
And shares and things.
Okay.
I haven't asked her lately. I only have her for like 15 hours a week right now. So.
Gotcha.
But
Yeah.
soon we can strategize more.
Right. And so I mean, you're talking about, like, hey, if we dedicate someone to this, to getting the engagement that we need, then we are sacrificing the amount of stories, or the depth in which the stories we can cover.
We all have limited resources. You have to make choices.
Yeah. And so, but at what point do you guys get to, like, okay, that is a sacrifice we need to make?
Oh no, I mean, I'm struggling with that right now. Like, I'm in a training at the Poynter Institute, which is like the temple of journalism. It's awesome. It's for public media leaders to help you be a better leader. And my project is a new strategy, because we have to think very seriously. I'm like, we're going to cover this. We're not covering that, or whatever. Like, and it's like other people are covering it. It's not part of our mission. And you have to get real clear on that, with the caveat that we're in uncertain, weird times, and always have to be flexible. And sometimes you are going to stay late or go and work on a weekend. That's just the way it is.
Yeah.
So, but I think you have to decide what your mission is, and then focus your resources on it.
Absolutely.
And I'm just coming.
Well, sure.
I was a reluctant leader. I'm finally coming to it after like 3.5 years. I'm like, I have to be more organized and do these things.
And we on stage, we have two guests who are in the realm of just the online, long-form, investigative pieces. And so I'm wondering what both of you think about this. And, like, what does success look like for you with an article?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I think Searchlight and I think Source has the same setup. We make everything republishable for free to every news outlet in the state or even in the country. So it's an easy republish button at the bottom of our page. So if you see something, you know, it has a Creative Commons license. So
Yeah, we use a lot of their digital stuff.
yeah, so I think that's part of our model to get stories out. But specifically for me, you know, success looks like, I mean, it can look a couple different ways. It can be me, you know, at the store with my mom in Espanola, and somebody comes up to me and they're like, that article you wrote was brutal, but it was true, right? And I've had that happen to me before. My mom's always like, I ran into so-and-so at church and they didn't like it. But nonetheless, they were talking about it, right? They weren't saying Alicia was wrong. They weren't saying Alicia was inaccurate. They were saying they didn't like it. And that's engagement to me, right? And then there are instances, too, where people come up to me and they say, you know, for example, I wrote a story about Truchas, where I'm from, and we held a community gathering where I talked to people at the public library about how I did that story, how I reported it, and I walked everybody through it. And that to me was success, when I can come back to my community and say, I wrote a story about you, about us, about our experience in the nuclear industry that was honest, and then I'm going to tell you how I did it.
Does that kind of success translate to your higher ups?
That's a good question. I don't know.
Alicia, did you go back? You went back, like you reported the story, and then you went back and like, okay, what'd you think?
Yeah,
That's
exactly what I
amazing.
did.
That doesn't happen enough in our profession.
Yeah. I went back, and you know, my parents were in the audience. You know, my cousins were there. All sorts of people were there, right? And so there were people asking me questions like, how did you find out this piece of information? And I said, I'm happy to tell you how. And I walked them through, you know, some of what I write about is really scientific, and I'm kind of figuring it out. So I walked them through the science, everything. That to me was a successful story. And it won a national award. So it was successful in a different way. And I think the most successful stories do both, right? Mm-hmm. Like they can tap into my community and feel like my community is reflected in an honest way, but somehow it still resonates to people who aren't from New Mexico, but nonetheless can feel sympathetic about an issue. And so I think social media is, to everybody else's point, like ditto. If I'm writing a 5,000 word story, I can't put my time and resources into social media, and I wish I could, but I'm also very elusive when it comes to social media or generally. And so I think that that's part of it too. And at Searchlight, we have 3 full-time reporters. We have contributing writers. We have 1 editor, and you know, we have a development person and an executive director. So that's like, and our website person. That's less than 10 people. And so you have to pick and choose where you're going to put your time and your thoughtfulness.
And what I would add on to what Alicia said is that there is this distinction between what our higher ups view as success and what we might view as success. Like I'm oftentimes, just to be transparent, you know, my editor is concerned about analytics, like how far is this story going, and that matters. Like
KPIs,
I want people to read it, but personally, like I don't care about that. Mm-hmm. But I think that what I care the most about is like is my storytelling connecting people? Like are people seeing themselves in the stories that I'm telling, and are they seeing common ground with my subject? Mm-hmm. And am I making my subject of the story into a human person who is legible to the rest of society? And just to circle back to the issue of social media and getting on your feeds, I don't have any reason to believe that these feeds are constructed to get good journalism in front of people. I personally believe that
Yeah.
these feeds are owned by billionaires who
Mm-hmm.
don't want critical coverage to reach you.
Exactly.
I have no reason to believe that those feeds are meant for good journalism to reach people.
Totally. And which brings me to a question that has been on my mind a lot, which is, can we convince people to not use these platforms as journalists, as the people who kind of?
You know, it was interesting at one of the focus groups we had. I mean, I used to be in print. I'm now obviously not, but younger people, like they kind of resent being tethered to these.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember one of them saying, like, on campus they'd pick up the paper of the Daily Lobo, and they liked the tactile quality. I was like,
Oh yeah.
where were you
Physical
like 10
media.
years ago when I was still in print? But yeah, that was kind of fascinating. I don't know what to do with that information, but
I mean,
you know,
yeah, there's this
maybe
whole, like,
there are other models that can arise that aren't
dumb
reliant on
phones
those.
and like the Luddite community that's rising up among these kids. I don't know if we have an actual like opportunity here with all the like hate that is welling up around these billionaires now that they've shown their true face. This might be getting a little too in the weeds, but I think that, like, you know, if anyone has some of the power to do that, it's the journalists who are part of the information system to get the word out that, like, oh, you know, Instagram is giving you what it thinks you want to see. Mm-hmm. And it's, you know, I mean, we've been talking about echo chambers and filter bubbles for over 10 years now. And it just seems like, well, maybe there's a time that, like, we can shift people to some of these more equitable platforms.
I think there's a really important exception to this. I totally agree with what you just said, but over the past 15 months of genocide in Gaza, I have been connected to more Palestinians than ever before. And I do think that that's oddly a complete contradiction of what I just said. Mm-hmm. I have been put into close proximity with people from Gaza more in the last 15 months than ever before. And I've been paying attention to that issue for years. And there's something there that I can't quite articulate, but my Instagram feed is showing me what's happening on the ground in Gaza. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure, maybe that's just the way that I'm interacting with the app. Yeah. But it's a strange exception that I've found.
Well, an oddly benevolent algorithm.
I will say what you guys are doing here, like IRL, I think that's really important, especially for a COVID generation. And I don't know how to, you know, leverage that, but community engagement is something we're thinking about a lot too, yeah. And including in-person things. And I think that's one way to circumvent some of these platforms. I don't know.
Yeah.
Nodding. I think so. To reiterate what Alicia said before, the in-person things are huge. Like at New Mexico PBS, I was able to get a grant where I was doing community engagement, where we did this 1 hour program on climate change that had a bunch of field packages in it. And then I did like these community luncheons and community dinners and went back to the communities that we had filmed and, you know, put their segments up on the screen and, you know, ate meals together and socialized and talked. Awesome. And that was really, like, for me, that was way more rewarding than, you know, the 12 likes that we get on our Instagram page. Or like one time, oh boy, we had like a little bit of money to do YouTube ads. And so this documentary that my partner and I spent 3 years working on was able to get like 15,000 views because we paid for YouTube ads. And, so it's just like, it's like you're craving that, like, oh, I want people to see this, but like those real relationships are the ones that I think have more of a lasting impact.
I mean, yeah, we certainly enjoy the dopamine hit when people like our content. But I think all of us in 505-O-Matic, we've jumped on the opportunity to do this just because we see two things in it. There's a loneliness epidemic going on, folks. I'm not sure if the Surgeon General has been arrested yet, but
Dr. Oz.
Oh yeah, he didn't. No, not him. He didn't. I wouldn't be surprised. But yeah, there's a loneliness epidemic going on. But another thing occurred to me and some of my comrades here, to use a term. We noticed that the right kind of has a mandate to get together in person every week. It's called church. And
not everybody who goes to church is right wing.
That's true.
I grew up in a very social justice-oriented Catholic household. I volunteer at a Catholic workers' soup kitchen every Sunday. Just FYI.
Gotcha. But the culture, it's out there. This getting together and talking and listening to each other is something that is lacking on the left side of things. And so we're pumped to do this, and I'm just pumped to be in a room with people I love, and it's hard to get out. It's really like pulling teeth these days for at least for me, who's got a kid and is over 40. So there is something to that. But I feel like we're tooting our own horn here.
Well, no, I mean, I think media has a power to convene.
Yeah.
And it should do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, I mean, I applaud that. I think we should do it more and use that power. There's a group here called Braver Angels in New Mexico that brings together people who are on the left and right to talk about things. They're not media. They're all over the country, but yeah.
So they like specifically try to bridge.
You have to have the state group you have to have a Democrat and a Republican agree to run it.
Oh, interesting.
So we did some stories on them last year, but they're all over the country. But I do think when I produced a show at PBS called Public Square, I would do like one. It was funded by Kellogg, so it was always very uplifting subjects like child abuse, domestic violence. But I would bring together people working on the problem, and then lawmakers and others, like, well, let's talk solutions. But I would bring people together in a state that only has 2 million people who would be working on an issue. And I would we all know each other, right? I'm like, they didn't know each other. And then the most interesting thing would happen after the cameras turned off. They'd all hang out and talk and exchange information. It was like, we should be capturing this somehow.
Yeah.
Or doing that.
Oh, yeah.
So I think media does have that power to bring people together. Anyway.
Yeah, totally. I mean, yeah, you guys we should all try to get together and keep doing this. It feels good. Which brings me kind of to this next question. I think we covered a little bit, but let's say like money, time, job security, and now retaliation is no issue. What is each of your dreams for local journalism?
I'd love to have Source is kind of trying to do this, but like a real statewide network of integrated news organizations sharing content, producing content together. I think the journalism school at UNM made a run at this with a big grant. I don't remember who that was with, Scripps or something. And they went to Mississippi instead, but we really tried. And I think that could have been the germ of doing something like that. I'm not saying it can't happen, but to what I just said, there's so many silos in this state.
Mm-hmm.
I will say, we're small enough, like most journalists here, like we all know each other to some extent. And outlets have gotten a lot better about collaborating. I mean, they're under Creative Commons. We use their stuff. Anybody can use our stuff. I have to make that more known to people because we do have
So
longer
I could
digital.
just go and make a video on one of your stories right now.
Yeah.
Sick.
Just give us credit.
Well.
I mean, just give us attribution. Like, that's all we ask. That's what we do with the outlets whose work we use.
Okay.
And we link back to their story.
Amazing.
But I even got the new editor at the Journal, who's quite a breath of fresh air, I will say. I sat with her and I was just like, what do you want? I was like, I want to use your stories, like not have to rewrite them all. She's like, yeah, go ahead. It's like, can we publish them? Yeah, that's fine. I was like, okay. And we do that with them too. So since we're literally using their words, we'll say like, Austin Fisher with Source New Mexico reported. The New Mexican I have not broached. So if we use one of their stories, we rewrite it because we don't want to plagiarize. We attribute it to them, but
Right.
so,
yeah.
But I got off track. But anyway,
Yeah.
yes, anybody could use our content. We just ask you. I mean, I have to come up. I need republishing guidelines like they have. That's just on my to-do list over here. Yes. So
My dream is that we don't have these monetary restrictions. I've come up in very small newsrooms from the beginning. Been doing this for 10 years, and almost every newsroom is like 3 or 4 reporters.
Mm-hmm.
That's not enough.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I wish that there was a bigger appetite for public funding of newsrooms, and that we weren't facing the complete opposite that NPR is facing of like possible cuts to the Public Broadcasting Corporation, right? And
Yep.
it's like, yeah, my dream is getting rid of these strictures on our resources. Like you're talking about with Mia doing the social media, like I don't have time to do social media outside of the basic
Yeah.
like posts that I do for each story. And
We'll help you.
yeah. Yes, please do.
I mean, if you got one that you're like, hey, I really want this to get out there.
you need to do one on the story Alice did.
Oh,
last
I know.
week
I was
before
going
she
to.
left us.
You stole my thunder. I was going to pitch that to Alice, but yes, that's an incredible. Alice did this amazing story on mental health and the changes that are going through the legislature right now, and everyone should check it out. I want to get your 2 answers briefly before we go to questions from the audience.
I mean, I guess my dream has always just been to write about my community. So I'm gonna do that no matter what, regardless of retaliation or job security or money, because I have done it regardless of all of those things. You know?
Mm-hmm.
And so if I can be here and keep doing that, then that's amazing.
My dream would be that that journalism is a way that you can actually earn a sustainable living and stay in your community. That journalists are, representative of their communities, that you can be a local reporter in Roswell or Silver City or Espanola, and that you can make a living and feed your family, and that it's the kind of career that anybody would want to go into, that you don't have to take your vow of poverty and, kind of be like, and that the audience rewards that work, that people pay a subscription for their local newspaper, that they donate to their, radio station, that we're there for each other. Like journalists, we're not just doing this because oh, it's really fun to get yelled at by your sources and everybody in the audience. That's a great life. I love it. We're doing it because we love you, because we love our communities, because we love our state. And we could be there for one another, right?
Can I have an addendum to my dream?
Yes.
Okay, I have an addendum to my dream that was inspired by what you said. I grew up in Truchas and Espanola, and the newspaper we had did not represent our community. In fact, it made our community feel really terrible and demeaned. And so I grew up thinking that that's the function of journalism, was to demean the public in some way. And so I never thought that I would become a journalist, or that there could be an ethical way to do journalism. And so I'm not a trained journalist. I never went to journalism school. I had to figure out what that meant for myself. But what I learned along the way was that my community could teach me something about not wanting to be dignified in coverage, even if it was critical. But B, that there isn't enough representation in our communities, because if there were, we wouldn't feel the way we feel about certain outlets representing us, right? And when you look up the numbers, there are so few journalists of color. There are even fewer women journalists of color. And so in a state that is minority majority, we don't have that kind of representation in our newsrooms, period. And we should. So that's my other dream, but that's a little, it's less dreamy.
I want to go ahead and open it up to some audience questions. So if there's anyone out there who has a question for our roundtable, let Katie here know. I see a hand there in the back. All right. Oh, there's a switch right there on this side. Thank you.
Hi there.
Hey, what's your name?
Julia. I'm Julia.
Hey.
Journalism is what brought me to New Mexico. I feel like so many great things and really encouraging things have happened in the last 5-6 years here. But I'm curious what you all think, especially investing in investigative journalism, which has been impactful. But I now, on the more government comms side, feel like there's a real lack of solutions journalism, like the level of attention and explanation about what's working and why we should keep doing it is just I don't see it. Positive stories or stories of impact tend to kind of be shallowly reported or a nice little feature, but it doesn't feel like the public and legislators are getting educated on things that are working until all of a sudden they're abandoned and they're no longer working and it's look back. So I'd love to hear, I can really only think of PBS kind of having that as part of their model. Is there hope for that? What do you think?
Yeah, I was a fellow at the Solutions Journalism Network in 2018. I helped build their story database, which you can all access. It's all stories from all over the world. And I think it's a great model. I know my reporters are really interested in it. There is a training coming up, so I'm gonna nudge them again to do that, because it is a fairly robust model, so it's reporting on responses to problems, right? Whether they're working or not, which is important. And I mean, you kind of, doing the response that isn't working is kind of a drag, but important. But you're right, it closes the loop on a story. The stories get more engagement, they give people hope. Dee Dee Feldman did a really great book called Another Way Forward a few years ago, and she has a lot of great examples in there of programs that I've reported on over the years that are working, like El Centro, like Project Echo. But yeah, one of my reporters, we just did little testimonials because we're in our fundraising week. And Taylor talked about a story she did about Project Echo, which I'm sure has flaws, but an amazing model that's been replicated all over the world. And so we periodically report on that. Ed Williams, now he's Alicia's colleague before he was with us, and he reported on Echo. But you're right, we should have more of that. And I think when Solutions Journalism was here, God, it was before the pandemic. It was a long time ago. They had a trainer here, and they were trying to get with all the outlets to do this training. At the time, journal leadership was very different, and they could not get in there. I think they would be more amenable to getting trained in it. But you do have to be trained. It's not just here's the happy story. It's robust reporting. Mm-hmm. So, but I agree. I would love to see more of it. So I'm trying to give my reporters the tools how to do that and what it is.
I had a thought on that. You know, I think so much of what is said about New Mexico is like deficit uh, frameworks. And so, you know, you see things like New Mexicans don't know how to read. They don't, you know, they're like in the 50th percentile of everything, right? Like we see that those statistics over and over and over and over and over. And so I think that that's part of like the other side of like solutions journalism is that what you often hear is like the repetition of these statistics when we're not looking at, well, maybe New Mexicans are bilingual. You know, maybe we have other skill sets that can't be measured by a measuring stick developed by somebody who's not in the state or who's ever set foot in the state, right? Yeah. And those are a little bit more intangible for me when I think about that kind of thing. When, you know, I always resist statistics like that because I'm like, you know, we were forced, you know, so many New Mexicans, whether, you know, you're Chicano or you're from a tribe, you were forced to assimilate, and that required a lot of different ways to survive. And that's not, you know, we're still at the bottom of every percentile, but hey, like, folks, we're still here. We're bilingual, we're trilingual, we have other skill sets. And so I think that like the deficit framework follows us around, and it's like this hangover, you know, that does make its way into reporting. And even when I was doing education reporting, I was constantly dodging these statistics because I'm like, damn, I don't want to be like dissing my fellow New Mexicans who went to public school because we have other assets, right? Like, yes, the structures of power maybe have failed us in certain ways, but like we have assets. What are they? You know, like maybe we need to report on the structures of power that failed us. That's what I was looking at. But that's not, you know, that's not to say that there isn't solutions. It's just that like the frameworks that we use with which to measure our people against don't work for us. They just don't work. They were made by somebody else and they're not for us. So like, that's what I think about that.
I think something really important to add on to what Alicia is saying here is that, right, so much journalism is focused on the deficits, but the flip side of that is understanding and highlighting abundance and sharing, and specifically mutual aid. When I think about March 2020, I think about the Rio Arriba County Health Council sewing together masks for the community. And I think about how we all cared for each other in those first couple of years. And I think we've lost that. I think that there was an aspect of mutual aid that that taught me that you don't always have to view the world in terms of deficits or in terms of scarcity, and that journalism should be highlighting when we have abundance and when people are willing to share things with each other and willing to share in our collective abundance, because those were the most inspiring moments that I've seen in the recent history.
Gotcha. Yeah. Do we have any more audience questions? Oh, yeah, a couple.
Thank you. I'm not a public speaker, so hopefully I stay standing for all of this, but I keep hearing the word community come back around and around and around with every question we've been asking and answering so far. And I heard, is it Alicia, talk a little bit about how she was able to bring that back to her community and close that loop. And I wonder what it would look like for these other organizations to maybe try something like that, because it really feels like, and you guys were talking about education. I am a teacher here in Santa Fe, and thank you. I talk in front of children, not adults. And one of the things I've noticed is that in my job, I don't talk about my opinions, political or otherwise. It's not really like, I don't talk about it with the families or with the kids. We stick to what we're doing. And what I find is that, parents and other teachers will talk to me about their political leanings. And what I'm finding is that they assume that I'm with them.
Mm-hmm.
And I find that we end up having more in common than they might think we did if we were talking a little bit more candidly about our positions. So I'm wondering what it would look like for the other organizations in the room to start making those community conversations happen.
Yeah, so that's a great question, and I don't work for PBS anymore, but I worked there most recently. So at New Mexico PBS, I had an entire program focused on environmental issues, and as part of that, we did community engagement. We went back to the communities when we had funding to do that, but we also did middle school lesson plans focused on all of the environmental issues that we were covering that are free for teachers. We did teacher trainings, like we try. And that's like another thing that's really hard to get, even when you're a broadcast television station. It is really hard to get people to pay attention to the fact that you are making all of these lesson plans. And so it takes money, it takes extra staffers. Like the only way that I could ever do the lesson plans or the community engagement events were when I went and found funding to do that, a grant to do that, or an educator to hire on contract to help write the lesson plans. So it takes a lot of money, which...
They have a full-time community engagement person. They have a bigger staff than we do. And we were part of a nationwide grant called America Amplified last year that the idea was to create a citizens agenda voter guide, among other things, but to also really get into community engagement. And it was fascinating. I had to do a lot of trainings. I wrote Mia in to do it because, she's my intern, and it's like, you're doing this with me. And I really want to do more of it, but to Laura's point, you're right. And we talked a lot about how to, which I love what Alicia did, because they emphasized to us, you're going to go out and whatever you're doing, what do you want candidates to talk about? How are you going to ask those questions? She's like, don't be an asshole. Don't be extractive. Go back and share. And we tried to do some of that, but it is about funding and money. It's also about a shift in mindset because, it takes someone like me to say to all my reporters, a quarter of your time is going to be community engagement. I need to go chase a story. Well, tough shit, you have to do community engagement today. They don't always like that because there's a reason. They like to go chase the stories, and I appreciate that. So it's a push-pull. It's me figuring out, what can we do? I'm working with our development department, which sometimes it's like advertising and commercial pubs, no, stay away. But I'm being real. She knows the boundaries, and I'm like, they're doing community events every month. I'm like, okay, well, what do we need to do? We'll go table with you. We'll go talk to people. We're small. We have to figure that out. But I know organizations smaller than us have done it. So I know it's possible, but it's also thinking okay, so we're going to have 6 newscasts a day instead of 8, right? Because we're going to have less stories. I'm just saying these are the things you have to think about. And I totally agree with you that what Alicia is doing is phenomenal, and I would love to do more of that. And I just have to figure out how to win over internally that culture shift.
Yeah.
And then how to make it happen. And, I'm the only editor. I'm just one person. But I hopefully we're on that pathway. I like to think we're on that pathway.
And I should mention, it is really fun.
Yeah, it is. We had a trivia night. It was a blast. We're totally going to do that again. I mean, that's not as profound as what she did, but it's going out and meeting your community.
Yeah.
And journalists could stand to be a little more fun.
Well, I'm having a good time with you all. And yeah, I'd love to do this again in the near future. Unfortunately, I think we have to wrap it up. So
no.
I'm going to go ahead and ask each of you where we can find and support your work. So we'll start with Alicia.
Searchlightnewmexico.org. That's mainly where it is. Yeah. Okay. The end.
And I am back to freelancing, which is awesome. To not have my job anymore. And basically, the best place to find me is on Substack right now. But I am doing stuff for like Capital and Maine and World Wildlife. And anyway,
You have a Substack?
I have a Substack.
All right.
It's called Laura Paskus because I couldn't come up with a clever name. So, yeah.
KUNM.org primarily, and on Instagram at KUNM News, and TikTok, and Facebook's KUNM Radio. We need to figure that out.
Go to sourcenm.com and click the donate button.
There we go. We should have brought those donate buttons in here today.
And we're on Blue Sky at SourceNM, and we're not on X anymore.
Not on X. Fuck yeah.
I want to get on Blue Sky. I haven't. Yeah, we'll do that eventually.
Yeah, it's great. It's nice. It's positive.
I know. It's like old Twitter.
All right, great. Well, thanks for tuning into this premiere episode of The Living Room from 505-O-Matic and Slice of Santa Fe. You can follow us literally everywhere at 505-O-Matic, Instagram, TikTok, especially Blue Sky and Reddit. Full video episodes will be up on YouTube, and audio will be wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you.
Warren.
And thank you to the spectacular Jean Cocteau Cinema for letting us crash on your couches. Join us for the next episode, which for you in the audience is going to be in like 15 minutes, but for the people at home, it's going to be in 2 weeks. We'll be talking to two newish New Mexican politicians who have some fresh ideas for the future of the party. I'm Warren Langford. This has been The Living Room. See you next time.